Hey, this is Peter Hopwood, and I'm a speaker and storytelling coach. So, if you're wanting to learn really how to embrace change and navigate through disruption as a leader, then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend, Denis Giannoutzos.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Giannoutzos.
Hey, welcome to the show, Leadership is Changing. What we as leaders know to be true is that change is constant. Leaders everywhere confront similar obstacles because people are people, but everywhere you go, leaders are overwhelmed, disrupted, and under pressure. They run from email to email, meeting to meeting. Many leaders are not changing quick enough, which means they run the risk of becoming irrelevant and being left behind. The purpose of the show is taking our listeners' leadership to another level by finding their balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. I believe we don't have enough effective leaders in the world today, and if we can get the leaders to step up and lead change, then they can inspire real change. Hey listeners, it's now time to adapt in our fast-moving world. Hey listeners, welcome to today's episode. Great to have you with us here again today. And I've got a wonderful guest with me. His name is Peter Hopwood. He is the British Global Speaker Coach, Virtual Speaking Specialist, and TEDx Coach, Storytelling for Sales Trainer, and worldwide corporate events MC and speaker. He's lived in 7 countries, worked in 42, currently based in Split, Croatia, working worldwide on Zoom. Wow. On that Zoom, like we've got that Zoom tool to help us
You
all.
bet.
Yeah. Hey, Peter, welcome to today's show. Great to have you with
Well,
us.
thank you so much. I'm so glad to. I really am glad that we've made this happen. You way over the other side of my circle, and clearly I'm out of your bubble on the other side of the world. And by the magic of Zoom, we managed to do this. So I'm intrigued to see how this kind of unfolds tonight for me, in the morning for you.
And you are in Croatia right now,
That's
right?
right. Yeah. So I'm in Split on the south coast of Croatia. You might hear you might hear my accent. You hear my accent. It's not Croatian. I am British. I'm from London, but lived in Croatia for about just over 20 years now. So this is now my home, but I am actually a Brit.
And what made you go to Croatia?
It's a long story, but to squeeze it all together, I was at art college, art school, and then I once I graduated, I just wanted to travel. So I then went to, again, a long story cut short, went to 6 countries. In those countries, there was France. I lived in Paris. I lived in the south of France, Mallorca, Madeira on the a Portuguese island in the middle of nowhere, literally. Budapest, lots of other countries, 6 countries, and then I made my way to Croatia, working for a British tour operator. That is where I met a young lady. At the time, she was young. I'm not young anymore. She's not young anymore. I divorced that young lady. Actually, had 2 kids with that young lady while I was married, not divorced, obviously, and made Croatia my home. So years went by, and now this is really where I've settled with my company, with my business, and unfortunately, the work I do, I get to travel a lot, and but always come back home here to the Croatian coast.
And it's been an interesting time over the last 2 years whereby travel hasn't really been around for some of us. And for some of us, we've still been able to travel limited as well. Do you miss it?
I did miss it. I did miss it. Fortunately, over the last 6 months, things here on this side of the world, things are opening up quite well, especially in the Middle East. I was in Dubai a week and a half ago, and you wouldn't even think there was a pandemic happened at all,
Amazing.
right? So I did miss it, definitely. But then, you adapt and you have to try out other things. You have to keep those of us who have businesses, those of us who have to take care of ourselves, our families, but also people that work for us as well. We have to think of those and look for ways to adjust, to adapt, and survive. So that's kind of what I did, looking at really how I can coach people to do this. As when I say this, I mean speaking on Zoom, speaking through virtual exchanges, really helping people to get comfortable at this, creating the connection, creating this chemistry, using all those techniques that we use in person in terms of public speaking and getting our messages across. But here, the skill set's slightly different. So helping people to kind of retrain and do that really well, because as we know, it certainly wasn't at the beginning. And for many, it's still tough now, really, to get that connection, that credibility, that trust through that camera screen, and try to build up relationships that are not in person but virtually.
Yeah, it's interesting because I find this whole area fascinating, and I've been really looking forward to this interview. In relation to what? In relation to the speaking side of things. But when I work with a lot of executives and leaders, we're talking about how do they connect with the audience? How do they communicate in a way that's really going to get the message across that most people are going to go, I get it. And I think for sometimes a lot of people, Peter, they just get up there and they talk, they communicate, they're a talking head up front. And I'm just really excited about having you here. We're going to go through some questions about leadership and about what leaders are doing and so forth. Now, how did you get into this? How did you get into leadership? How do you get into working with leaders?
So I, as a speaker coach, a lot of my work at the beginning was actually just simple soft skills communications, right? So I opened my company here in Croatia. A lot of the companies were local, and then it kind of moved more towards the speaking side. How do you, the things you say, how you say them, and the impact that you have when you share those messages, right? And the perception, people's perception of you, the perception of yourself when you're sharing your messages. So all these things come into play, and really a lot of it is actually the kind of, it's not a mind game, but it's to do with how you feel about certain things. That's going to help you kind of share and leak out those messages in a better way. So during those soft skill years, I call them, that gave me a lot of opportunity to work with leaders, work with management teams, sales teams, and then moving on to CEOs. And so the idea of a CEO coming to me for help when they needed to speak at a conference, or they're on a panel discussion, or simply they just feel they need to kind of polish up the way they're sharing their messages in a more stronger way, that kind of became a reality. Because the leaders that I've worked with, and I'm sure it's the same for you as well, for many people that are listening, in terms of the competencies of a leader, most have them, right? Most have those competencies, right? Because that's how they got to where they are, right? Unless they got there another way, but we won't talk about that. But the thing is, in terms of communicating, this is a skill, whether you're a leader, whether you're middle management, whether you just started your first day on your job, or whether you're a teenager who's just coming out of school, right? Communicating is such an important skill that is all about connection, right? It's all about connection. So if we think of, let's say, a leader or leadership, and we think of words connected with leadership communication, right? We probably think of being bold, strong, courage, setting the tone, a follower. People have to follow you, right? But when it certainly comes to this environment where we have to, in front of a screen, in front of a camera, it's all about connection. Connection is the number one thing. So it's all about kind of switching, helping leaders to okay, those words are applicable, but really here, the number one and the first thing you need to do is really think, okay, how can I connect? How can I connect better? And so, it's all of those things: empathy, being transparent and clear, giving people space to think, letting people feel comfortable. Because at the end of the day, it's all about, if you're good at this, you're somebody who makes people feel comfortable looking at you and listening to you and being with you, right? So that is really sort of, that's how I kind of got into it, and this is really where we are now, helping leaders to do exactly that. Really make people feel, I think, making people feel comfortable and ready and receptive for kind of a connection. And once you've got that, then it's so much easier to lead even better, isn't it? It's so much easier for people to listen to you more, and it's so much easier to kind of share messages, even if those messages are not exactly what people want to hear, right? If they're negative, the negative side, you can, if you can connect better, from the beginning, you're setting yourself up for more success as a leader.
Yeah. Now, Peter, I was talking to the chairman of a board yesterday in relation to what you've just been saying. Wasn't talking to him about what you're saying, of course, but I mean, he brought up a topic yesterday that he was on a Zoom call in a meeting, and then once he finished it, his wife happened to be walking past the room that he was in the house, and she said to him, "Why were you getting so angry?" And he was like, "What?" She said, "Your voice was really loud at times, and you're really frustrated. What was going on?" And he didn't realize that he was doing that, and he knew he was frustrated, but didn't realize the tone of his voice or the volume of his voice was going up. When we're on Zoom meetings and things like that, being on stage live, sometimes we need to be animated depending on the stage. And I don't mean to be out there being like a crazy person, but bigger sort of things, because we look smaller on the stage. On a Zoom call and things like that, do we need to be animated? What should we do there?
Okay, so here's the thing. So again, so if it's in person and we're on a stage, lots of people looking at us. They're not maybe right in front of us. They're sort of further away. So this thing about using your energy and using your space equals confidence, right? So the more space we take up, usually if we're more people that are more confident, in many ways are using more space with their body, more space with their gestures, even more space between the fingers to show that they're actually more confident. It's a strange thing, but people who are confident, you never usually see politicians walking along with fingers that are, I'm showing you right now you can see this, people that listen to this can't see this at all, but simply I've got my hands out and my fingers are like next to each other, closed, without a space between those fingers. Usually when politicians are, we can see it on the TV all the time, you can see there's spaces between the fingers, almost as if they're like grabbing something, right? And that is something, as I say, space shows us that we're confident and that we're kind of in control of the situation, right? Here on this crazy world we call Zoom, right? We don't have naturally as many cues or as much data to go by to absorb what's happening, right? So if you think of it like this, we have to amplify all our signals to make sure whoever's listening and looking at us, they are very clear about what's happening, right? So if I right now, okay, listeners can't see this, but Dennis, you can, right? So you can see me and I'm standing up, right? It's not by accident I'm standing up. I stand up all the time for these kind of exchanges because it makes me feel stronger. It makes me feel more confident, and it also, the breath coming in gives a better quality of my voice, right? So that's the first thing, right? Also, you can see my gestures, right? So I'm making sure that you see my hands, right? So again, those people can't see this, so I'll just explain what's happening. Literally, I'm standing up, and just below my chin, between my chin and the bottom frame, which is like the top half of my chest up to my chin, this area here, this is where I'm showing what my hands are doing. And I'm just making sure that Dennis can see my hands. Some of those gestures are kind of like illustrative gestures where I'm kind of illustrating something. Some of those are kind of like baton gestures, like I'm saying something more and I'm putting it down. Some of them are kind of just rhythmic gestures, right? But you see my fingers, you see my hands, or an indication of what they're doing. This for you gives you this impression that you're slightly closer to me, or you slightly are more intrigued and curious as to what I'm saying. Also, certain things that I say, with obviously the tone that I'm saying them in and the intonation, together with a gesture, you're more likely to remember that, or remember that phrase or that moment when it's coupled with a gesture, right? So essentially, okay, a lot of gesture talk there, but essentially it's about being animated and making sure that what you what you share intrigues the brain of the person looking at you, right? So I have to so if I don't move at all, if I was to put my hands right down, and even the voice, if I was to just keep a normal straight talking voice, not making it any different, I'm just the same kind of tone all the time. I'm not really showing that I'm curious. I'm not really showing that I'm intrigued. I'm not even sharing with you that you don't even feel that I'm kind of interested at all in this conversation, right? So So again, and if I don't show you anything, it becomes more difficult for you to kind of evaluate what's happening. So I need to, where I can, as much as possible, let you know how I'm feeling, let you know what's happening, and in your brain, keep you stimulated, right? And I can do that in many small ways, as I say, through the voice, through my movements. I can actually get closer if I want to sometimes to the camera. I can maybe go back. I can raise my hands slightly higher. I can change the voice. As I say, the voice is the most influential thing that will sway our opinion, right? It's the most influential thing we have, all of us, that we can work on, that can actually sway an opinion, hopefully towards an outcome that you want, right? So I can change it in a way that's softer. I can change it in a way that's more exciting. I can raise it up slightly. I can put a bit more speed in there as well, or I can just simply slow down. And when I start to slow down, what happens is it becomes even more appealing, and also it becomes deeper. And when a voice comes deeper, unfortunately or fortunately, in the world we live in business, a deeper voice is slightly always more appealing than a higher voice. So essentially, it's about the signals that you share, making sure that things are moving. Always something moving. There's something changing. There's something that's going to stimulate the brain, because anything that's predictable, here's the thing as well, anything predictable, usually our brain says, oh, I know that. I don't need to listen to this because I know it, right? So if I was to, again, same tone all the time, all the same thing, just staying here like this, and I have this kind of monotonous tone, after a while, your brain's going to say to yourself, well, I know that. I know what's coming. I don't need to kind of listen to this. I'm not intrigued anymore. Like a movie, right? A predictable movie that you just know the ending, right? You know what's going to happen. Just like you're not intrigued as much as if you really didn't know what was going to happen. So anything predictable is not good. The only thing actually, and I've thought about this before, the only thing I think in terms of experiences that we listen to or watch and listen, that we accept as predictable, that we want something which is predictable, I think is music, right? Because when we listen to music, if we can listen to the same song for months and months, right? And we can enjoy it for months and months, right? It's not the same for a movie. It's not the same for a speech. It's not the same for a TV program, right? So being unpredictable and not making things clear, but making sure that things are moving and changing somehow. Small little changes with your gestures, voice, the way you look, the way you move, the way you come across, the tone. Your tone could be, you could have an exciting tone in a meeting. Let's say at the beginning, you can have like a kind of a relaxed tone through that meeting, and maybe at the end a kind of curious tone, right? So just mixing it up will always be a good thing for people that are listening to us and looking at us. Yeah.
Excellent. Listeners, I hope you're taking lots of notes here, because there are some real nuggets, some real great wisdom that Peter's sharing here with us.
There's actually Dennis, so when you started, so right now this is a conversation, right?
Yep.
But at the beginning, the tone you shared, right, when you introduced, the first thing people heard, your voice, there was a level of excitement, right? You've done this many times, right? This is exactly what I'm talking about. Really, it's like an exciting tone. It gave us this impression there's something good, something. Hopefully, this is good. I hope.
Of course
But
it is.
it gave everybody the impression that you're excited and there's something good about to happen. There's something good coming, right? And it shows us that you were excited as well, right? Because if the host isn't excited, or the host hasn't got much anticipation of what's going to happen, how can he or she expect listeners to do the same? So, but again, you changed it. You're actively listening to me, and that's a really, really good skill as well. Listening. So you've listened. You have your, we agreed, and you do this all the time with your guests. You send them over a list of questions. These are the kind of more or less the questions that will unfold, and we'll see how things go. But you're listening to my answers, which are dictating your next question, whether that be the same question that you've got written down. Maybe it will fit, or maybe it won't, right? But you're listening, and this spontaneity is so important by listening. And when I say spontaneity, I mean, it's like, because you're listening, you're ready to change, you're ready to adapt, you're ready to really listen to me. You're listening to my answers, which are dictating for you the next question. Again, it's this idea of think about an award ceremony where somebody, let's say Oscars, right? Well, maybe not Oscars, but an award ceremony, right? And someone's about to get an award. Everybody, they say the name, everybody claps, but they're not there. And that's okay. They're not there because they couldn't be there. But they're somewhere else, other part of the world, maybe, a recorded message with the award, right? Thanks so much. I'm so glad. Clap, 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 right? The feeling when you see that person with the award, okay, it's good, but it just, there's something missing, right? Because they've recorded that. They know it, it's not live. Anything that is recorded versus live takes away this spontaneity. If it was live and you see them and what they say is like real, it's there and then. It's okay. Maybe they've practiced their speech or whatever it is, but they're sharing it with emotion that's shared there and then. So spontaneity versus recorded, spontaneity will always get more appeal. So spontaneity in this case is you listening to my answers. Recorded in this situation would be you, regardless of what I'm saying, this is what we're sticking to. We're sticking to these questions, and that's it, right? I'm running the show. My name's Denis, and I'm running the show, right? So, but you are clearly not doing that. And that's a really good leadership skill in terms of what we're doing here, listening and letting the spontaneity come through. And that's always a good thing. What do you think? What do you think on that?
I want to get on with the questions. No, what I'm thinking about here, Peter, is that when I'm listening to things that I can ask questions about, or what are they actually saying here? Because I'm also thinking about the listener. What is this listener's probably thinking about? Oh, I might want to know more about that. And so I will actually dive a little bit deeper around a certain topic or a certain area that you may have just shared, to allow the listener and myself to understand more, but also for you to give more.
That's a really good skill. Really, so it's like really, on the side of the listener, really sort of in his or her shoes, what he wants, what she wants, making sense of what's happening as well. For you to kind of like condense everything and say, oh, it's kind of like this, bang, 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 bang. Yeah. So it's really, really. I like the way you're doing this, and clearly you've done it many times. And how many have you done so far? How many?
Well, we're getting very close to 300.
300. That's when did you start?
21 months ago. So yeah.
My God, that is, and clearly we can feel. I can see it. People can't see this, but I can see it. But people can hear it. They can hear in your voice that this is a passion of yours, and you're really good at it.
Yeah, and when you were talking about getting the voice across and the tones and things like that, when I was going through the area of the time with the tumor, if you think about Tony Robbins and his raspy or hoarse voice, it was worse than that. And it was like, wow. But my gestures on stage had to be bigger, had to help animate things and do that as well, which was really interesting. When I had it removed, or before having it removed, the tumor, they put me into speech therapy and with speech coaches and helping me learn to breathe again, speak again, get the message out again. And it was really amazing to go through that whole process, but also learning how to breathe again. And I didn't realize that I was actually in a fight-flight mode all that time. And so I was breathing from here up, and it's really amazing. Peter, I've got to ask you a question, which is, how you're talking about the hands, and we're talking about the hands and using those. Is it because you've been living in the Mediterranean area a lot? That's why you're using your hands a lot? I'm only joking here, but, even also coming from a Greek background, I tend to use my hands a lot because I'm energetic that way.
Interesting question. My father was British, a typical Brit. He blonde hair. So people can't see me, but if you check me out on LinkedIn, you can.
Well, they'll see your photo.
I'm sure. Yeah, they see the photo. Probably you can see this now as you're listening to this. You'll see that maybe I don't look like a typical Brit at all. My father was blonde hair, blue eyes, pale skin, skinny man who liked everything British, right? So and happy with the rain, right? That's that. My mother, however, was Maltese. She was born in Malta, all on my mother's side. So short, Mediterranean, dark-skinned, fiery, high blood pressure all the time, high temperament. And that combination, actually, at home when I was a kid, I thought about this the other week. In fact, my father also, he was very, very hard of hearing, very hard of hearing. So in our family, the communication between my mother and my father, a lot of it was very visual, right? So my mother really had to, with her gestures, sometimes, quite often, sharing messages to my father because he couldn't hear. She had to make it really clear. She did it two ways. One of those ways was through her gestures. Also, the other way was with her lips. So my father became a really good lip reader, really, really good lip reader, which wasn't great for us kids, for the other, three kids in the family. When we were in trouble, we walk off and we like say something behind up, say something, under our breath. He didn't hear it, but he could see our lips. We get into trouble. But the thing was, through the gestures and through her making sure he saw her lips say those words very, very clearly, right? This is how kind of like things went in our family. And so I'm sure I picked up on that. And so very simple, clear communication in our family, I'm sure has helped me through my career in sharing the same things to other people, right? Especially when it's, we know this, sometimes we go over the top, we share too much, we choose our words that maybe because we're trying to impress, or because we think these are better words and better phrases, when in fact sometimes, actually often, certainly here in this environment, it's about being really clear, and it's about being concise, and it's about doing things, getting to the point quicker, right? Because time here in this environment is so much more valuable than time in the real world. Strange to say, but it's true, because our attention's here. If people are listening to this, maybe you don't see any more value. It's easy for you to pause or just stop and go somewhere else. YouTube, watching a video, whatever it is, pause, go somewhere else. Netflix, we can just go somewhere else, right? So time, making sure that we're concise and clear here is really important. So I think it certainly in my family, this is how I kind of grew up. I grew up with that kind of in that environment, living in 6 countries before coming to Croatia in Europe. A lot of those were actually Mediterranean islands and on the Mediterranean, so very, very always close to the sea. So I think I've always managed to sort of share my messages using sort of the visual side has been really important for me, right? Especially in countries where I wasn't able to understand the language, or they weren't able to understand me. Living in Hungary, for example, really difficult in terms of, I was there for a year, difficult to share messages, even in English, because a lot of people then, not everybody spoke English or understood English. So it's what we share, how we share our messages verbally, but also non-verbally, people can pick up on straight away. Our tone, our intention, again, a really important thing, our intention. When we know our intention, it's so much more easier to share it, right? If we don't know our intention, it's a lot more difficult. You're the gentleman you were speaking to the other day, right? Maybe he didn't know the intention he had was maybe slightly different to what maybe he came across, right? In terms of the volume, in terms of the passion, right? So our intention can really help when we know what it is, and then we can share it. So when we share that intention, whether it's curiosity, that's a really good thing as well. All these things are coming out. When we show curiosity, that can only be a good thing for people to want to open up and connect with you, right? So a CEO or a leader of some kind, right? Showing curiosity to the people that work for him or for her can only be a good thing, because you feel like, oh, he or she's interested. They want to know how I feel, my opinion, right? So yeah, intention, curiosity, all these things are really important. But yeah, going back to your original question, yeah, I think yes. The answer is yes. Using my hands, and then my Maltese mother and my father, who's hard of hearing and living in 6 countries, where sometimes it was really difficult to communicate verbally. Gestures, intention, and sharing that has actually been an advantage for
So
me.
what we're saying here, listeners, is not that you have to come from the Mediterranean to be a good speaker or to get your message across. What we're saying is that we need to be aware of all our sensory things and all the tools that we have at hand to be able to use those in a way that's going to be relevant for the audience, relevant to get your message across. And Peter, the intention thing is really interesting. A friend of mine, he was in a car crash, or a car behind him hit him, or no, he hit the car in front of him. That's right, he hit the car in front of him. And, two big guys get out and, they're walking towards each other, and the intention could be to have a go at each other. But this guy just put his hand out and introduced himself, to shake the guy's hand and introduce himself. And with a massive smile, just changed the whole dynamics amazingly, just like there and then on the spot. And I was like, wow, just to see that's thinking about the intention, just talking about. But there's this word that you've used a few times today in this interview, which I love. And that's that curiosity, that curious word. It is huge. And, I just wish that a lot more leaders were more curious about things, because if they're curious about things and about people would feel, as you said, when you're with that person, they feel like you're interested in them so much that nothing else matters right now. And and we have to be real and authentic about that, right? Because if you fake that, people are just going to see through it.
Yeah, no, completely. So yeah, curiosity comes in all. I was going to say it comes in all shapes and sizes, but it really doesn't. In terms of the formats, certainly yes, you can use that curiosity in all different areas. Like let's say in sales, right? For example, a discovery call. Really thinking, okay, well, this is an exploration, right? We're going to explore something together. I'm curious to know what you guys are doing, and the challenges you're facing, to see if this is actually a fit. This isn't me saying I'm great. I'm a great speaker coach. I'm a perfect fit for you. I can help you, and I'm the best guy you can ever hire to help you speak on stage, right? It's not that. It will be more of a like, okay, tell me. I'm curious to know. I'm really curious to know what are the kind of challenges that you're facing right now, or how do you feel about your speaking? Do you think you're good? Do you think people listen to you? I really like to explore this, because then that helps me figure out the things that maybe I can help you with, and then we can hopefully it's a good match. I think it's a good match. It sounds like a good match, right? Compared to, like, if we compare that to the other people I've helped in the past. But really, as I say, I'm curious to know, your side, what you think. So as soon as we throw this kind of curiosity, and that's for everybody, as I say, people who work for us, regardless of their title, or where they are in the company. When we show that curiosity, it makes us always feel like, okay, they're interested in us. They want to know. They want to know something that we have, that we can share. Right. I'm curious. So often, for example, when someone reaches out over LinkedIn, I reach out to a lot of people over LinkedIn. A lot of people reach out to me. They reach out to me. First thing I'll say, say a quick hello, and just a quick hello. I'm really curious to know, what is it that triggered you to reach out to me, right? And that can really help me figure out the next step, if there's a next step. Sometimes it's, oh no, I just want you, someone like you, in my network, and happy to connect. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, great, good to connect. Or it might be, I heard you on a podcast. I heard you on Denis's podcast, and I was thinking, perhaps we can collaborate, and then it helps me figure out again where we're going next. So this word curiosity, yeah, it's a really, really big thing, that regardless of being a leader or not, I think we can all use more, and we can all, if we start in a kind of in our minds, trying to use that word or think of that word together with connection, right? Curiosity, connection, and intention, right? Think about those words. We're already in a state of mind that can actually lead us to somewhere which could have a better outcome, right? And again, making people feel comfortable and connecting. So a lot of this, the work is done before we even like hit the button and look at the camera, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd agree with that,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably one thing whereby people try to wing it, or they get up front to do a presentation in front of their audience, whether it be one-on-one or whether it be a group, and then they wonder why it's not going that great, or wondering why they get the same sort of results. And it does come down to the preparation beforehand. And don't wing it. Go make sure you know your lines is one thing. I always say, Peter, that with structure comes flexibility, the ability to be able to move. And you talked about it right earlier on about the 7 questions, but we're able to move around, which is really interesting. I've got a question. I've got a couple more questions, and then we can bring it to an end. But there's this burning question I have in me, which is around storytelling. Why the importance of storytelling? Should leaders be talking about stories? Should they be using storytelling to help get their messages across, and why?
The answer to that is yes,
Great.
definitely. So storytelling, again, when we think of storytelling, for a lot of us, we think of this kind of like epic adventures, rags to riches, a story, start of a story, a hero, a hero's journey, and then at the end of the day, it's all like wow. And try to sort of put that to the side and think of storytelling as simply moments of emotion plus a lesson. So moments of emotion plus a lesson, right? Because stories, that's all what stories are. It's moments of emotions that we've all felt and can all relate to, right? So we think about gossip, right? So two people, my ex-wife and are you married? You're married? Okay, well, I have to imagine that, but two women coming, it doesn't have to be two women, anybody, friends coming together for a coffee, telling each other a story, stuff that has happened over the last week or so, some juicy stuff, some not so juicy stuff, bits and pieces. That's all storytelling, right? Because it's the intrigue that we have as humans to know, to listen to emotions, moments of emotion, and what they mean, right? So it's happening all the time. Storytelling happens in, celebrity magazines. That somebody has just maybe a celebrity that is now divorcing, or a celebrity is now pregnant. Who cares, right? But the people do care because it's emotion. All these emotions, like all emotions that all adults feel, we can relate to, right? We can all relate to those emotions, because most of us, nearly all of us, have gone through emotions, right? So fear, rejection, excitement, joy, sadness, all the others as well, right? So when we talk about those things, we can straight away imagine what it feels like to be there, or feels like to experience that, right? And then at the end of it, a lesson, some kind of a lesson, some kind of like, okay, well, what does this mean, right? So that essentially is what storytelling is. And so if we can use that more, people can listen to us more as well. So it's, again, I said earlier on, unpredictability is good. A story usually is unpredictable. You don't know where it's going. So I can tell you, okay, let me explain to you a little bit about what happened yesterday, right? So I started the day at like this. I went downstairs. So again, I can continue with that, but you don't know where that's going.
No.
You don't know, and you think it's the truth. We kind of automatically, we don't know. Okay, loads of fake news and loads of manipulation. Naturally, that's happening in the world, in the media. We know that, right? But generally, when we start telling a story of what's happened to us or somebody else, or the future, something in the future, vision story, let's say, we kind of believe it, yeah, and that's a good thing. We believe it, right? So again, in terms of sharing messages, in terms of, let's say, sales as well, when we're talking about how good something is or how great something is, as soon as you start to feel that this is scripted, that this is, I've said it a million times before, you know what's coming. Again, it's predictable. You're just one in a million. You're just, well, not one in a million. You're actually a person that I've spoken to about this, that is just like all the others. You're not different than anybody else. You're going to feel, actually, this feels salesy, and I don't want to continue this conversation, right? But if let's say I started to share a little bit about what happened to a client of mine, just like similar to you, right? and I start explaining, and I start explaining about that success story, how they came to us, how we met, what they were looking for, the challenges they had, and then how I sort of stepped in and helped them with this, and this, and they're kind of not the moral of the story, but at the end of the day, they're now, happy, more confident, and sharing their messages and getting more business, right? So you don't feel not threatened, but you certainly don't feel like, okay, this is salesy. So at stories, you can throw them in literally pretty much anywhere along that scale to get people's attention, right? So stories are really helpful with that. Again, you can tell a story about something that's happened to a friend. Let's say you tell it to me, there's a moral or there's a lesson. If it's a really good one, tomorrow I can, a friend of mine, I can say, listen, I was on this podcast last night, and the guy called Denis, and he told me about this guy, and blah 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 blah. I won't say exactly the same words as you with exactly the same tone and exactly the same phrases, but the moral, the lesson, I'll share that, right? The same thing. So stories are really viral, right? They're really easy to kind of pass on, right? So as a leader with stories, with experiences, as a company with people in that company who have many different experiences, many different clients, let's say, many different success stories, it's always a good idea to kind of come together now and again and almost share those stories internally, so that you've got all these small little, and again, they don't have to be big things or big adventures. They can just simply be, things that they've seen or experienced or heard, or something happened to them that made them think about this, which is relevant, which is a message which we can all take, right? A client that was had a few challenges at the beginning, but at the end of the day, you worked with them closely to get through those challenges and those issues, and at the end of the day, they're happy clients, right? And you're still with them, right? So stories are, again, moments of emotion with a lesson that can help us all. People who work for us, potential clients who have already worked with us, right? And it can do many things. It could build the brand, it could build their credibility with you, and it also really helps connection. So again, I can start with a story, I don't have to say this is a story, because
No.
again, if I say, let me tell you a story, again, your brain actually goes the other way and starts to think of when you were a kid, maybe when when we were a kid, let me tell you a story. And when let me tell you a story, you think of a storybook, and you think of a fable, and you think of, well, okay, this is kind of like La La Land. This isn't actually real, right? So always get away from saying, let me tell you a story, or here's a story about, right? Just go straight into it. So I can start telling you a story about something that happened to me, or my background, or whatever it is. When I do that, you as a listener, again, if we don't know each other, you're more inclined to then open up and share your story, right? So what am I saying here? The more we kind of share stories, we kind of share stories to get stories. And when we do that, and when that exchange starts to happen more frequently, what happens? Connection happens stronger. There's a stronger connection, right?
Yep.
So essentially, stories can help in many ways, to strengthen that connection, to strengthen the credibility of who you are, your company, and also the services and the value you're providing. So really, yeah, stories are really essential, and often we don't always realize that the power of what they can do.
Oh, awesome. Listeners, you could be actually listening to this podcast, whether this episode with myself, with Peter, or other episodes I've got, and you can utilize and say to people, hey, I heard this on an episode the other day on this podcast I was listening to, and you can use those kind of stories as well. Peter, that's so powerful about storytelling, and I love it. Moments of emotion, and the lesson. It's the lesson as well that's really, really quite key, to actually bring it home for people, for them to actually understand and make it relevant for them. Now, Peter, just a final question I want to ask you. The show here is called Leadership is Changing. When I say that title of the show or that statement, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, leadership's changing. I mean, for me, because of the work I do, and because I'm a lot of the time here looking through this screen, working with leaders, helping them connect more. It is changing. It's still changing. it changed dramatically. Naturally, something came up 22 years ago. We all know what that is, right? So helping leaders really connect better here, and again, it's the same thing. Offline, in the real world, in person, right? These skills that we have or had, these competencies, these communication competencies, right? All well and good, but when it comes to here, when it comes to this, that doesn't mean you can just transfer exactly the same things to this environment, because a lot of the time it doesn't work. One example is with sales leaders, right? So something that I've seen often, and it comes up all the time with the sales teams that I work with, right? So in person, sales teams, sales professionals, really good. They know what they're doing. They've done it for years. They're striving. They have their ups and downs, but they're pretty good, and they consider themselves good sales professionals, right? Because they've got the skills, and they've got the know-how. They know those little things, all the little kind of tricks and the little strategies and the techniques, and that's all well and good, and that's cool, right? But when it comes to here, so many doing exactly the same thing, what they do in person, they do it here, and they're finding there's something missing. It's not working. It's not working as well, right? They're not getting as many on those discovery calls. They're not getting as many kind of next conversations down the line, or something that trust, that credibility isn't as, they don't get it as quick perhaps as they would do in person, right? And it's the other way as well. Some people maybe in person were not great at, not particularly great at selling in person, but when it comes to here, because maybe they're focused, they're really aware of how they're showing up. They're really thinking about things like intention, connection, curiosity, right? They're managing to connect better. So the connectors, we can say, if you're a good connector here, that opens up more possibilities to be stronger in whatever competency you have, right? So a stronger connector here, and we're seeing sort of new, almost like new sales stars, right? New heroes in the sales industry, because they know what they understand, that here those other skills are really important. That connection, really showing you're curious, really trying to listening through the screen is not easy, right? But you can do it by showing. You can do it by showing certain signals. Again, people can't see this. You can see this, Dennis, right? So tell me the kind of things that you've noticed that show you that I'm curious and I'm really listening to you. What have you noticed? You can share with the listeners.
You're almost like leaning into the screen is one thing. The other thing I'm noticing is that your eyes, but also the way that you're looking at me, is like you're with intent to know what's going on and listening to me. But then the other one is you will clarify what I've actually said as well, and
Yeah.
and the nodding, of course, as well, which is really helping. And I think all of that as a combination brings it together nicely for me, that I know that you're with me as I'm saying
You got
things.
it. That's it. I want you to be 100% clear of what I'm feeling, or what I want you to feel, right? So I can do many things. Again, with these non-verbals, my nodding, I can do that. I can do this, so you can see, so you see this right now, Dennis. So I've got my finger on my chin, and I'm kind of thinking. So it's sort of showing you that I'm kind of like considering
Yep.
something. Even like folding my arms like this is an indication that I'm kind of thinking about this. Yeah, I'm curious about this. I'm curious to know
Yep.
what you think, right? My head is slightly to the side, which again gives the impression that I'm listening more to you, because my ear over to the side is just one of those indications that gives you the impression that I'm listening more to what you have to say. So yeah, all of
Absolutely.
these things are really, really important. So people that are kind of showing these, or aware of these at least, first thing is being aware of them, and then you work on them. And because good thing about Zoom is, well, Zoom, any kind of virtual exchange, because we're doing them all the time, it's something that we do constantly every day. So why not say to ourselves, well, I'm going to get really good at this. I can practice this every day.
Yeah.
I can practice
Yeah.
this every day. So small things you do, and you get good at them, and you can see and hear and feel if they're working. You can see and feel from the other person whether these things are actually working or not. So the more you do them, the more you get good at them. So again, it's all about helping these leaders, sales leaders, marketing, whatever department they're in, or even the CEOs, to really be aware and connect more with and feel comfortable, and making others feel comfortable as well.
Awesome. What an awesome conversation. Peter, thank you so much for joining us on today's show. If our listeners are wanting to get a hold of you, where should they go?
Easiest way is go straight to LinkedIn. Go to LinkedIn. There's Peter Hopwood public speaking, or Peter Hopwood storytelling. Pop it in there. I'll come up, and you can see all the stuff, all the things I've been doing in the past. A little bit about my background, and lots of other. There'll be this podcast here as well, naturally. And you see what I'm doing. You've heard this conversation here. You're intrigued. Maybe you like to know more. Or like to. Maybe you feel that maybe your company, or you need a little bit of a polish, or a few tips and ideas on how to really communicate and really get good at this virtual game that we're still in. It's not going away. You'll agree with me. Reach out. Let's have a quick call, and perhaps we can work out where we can collaborate.
Awesome. Peter, once again, thank you so much for joining me on today's show.
Thank you so much. And I really hope we can do this again sometime. It's been fun.
Likewise. So there you go, listeners. Be curious, connect with people, and have the right intention. Hey, listeners, what we as leaders know to be true is that change is constant. Change is incredibly scary, especially with the unknown and unfamiliar territory. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing. Look out for the episodes as they're being released. Download them, have a listen, put a review and a rating. Feel free to share them with your friends, your family, and your network. If there's any feedback you'd like to give me about the show, or if there's a question you have for the Ask Denis Freestyle episode, then send me an email, dennis@leadingchangepartners.com. Hey, listeners, it's always a pleasure being with you. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.